My name is Tracy Cooper, and I'm sitting across from my boss, Tyson Creed, as he slowly slides a sheet of paper across the polished glass desk between us. It's my annual performance review. I've worked at Creed and Alder Consulting for 9 years. Tyson leans back in his leather chair with that particular expression he always gets when he thinks he's about to deliver devastating news, the kind of look a man wears when he believes he has absolute control over someone's future. "We're reducing your salary by 50%, he says casually. "You can accept it, or you can leave. The number printed on that page is so low it would barely cover my rent." For a moment, I just stare at it. Before continuing, please take a few seconds to like the video and subscribe to the channel, but only if this story truly resonates with you. Don't forget to let me know where you're listening from and what time it is in your local area right now. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. Now, let me get you back to the story. 9 years. 9 years of 72-hour weeks. 9 years of fixing campaigns that were already collapsing before the clients even realized something was wrong. 9 years of being the person every major client actually spoke to, while Tyson stood in conference rooms accepting praise for results he didn't create. And now this. I look up at him. He's smirking. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile someone makes when they believe they've cornered someone with no options left. "I understand," I say quietly. Tyson's eyebrows lift slightly. "When does this take effect?" I ask. "Immediately." His smirk widens. I nod slowly and fold the paper with careful precision before placing it back on his desk. "Perfect timing," I tell him. Something flickers across his face, because my reaction isn't what he expected. What Tyson Creed didn't know, sitting there behind that desk trying to humiliate me, was that 3 weeks earlier, someone else had already called me with an offer that would change everything. What you just heard was the emotional truth. The rest will contain some fictional elements and use AI to clarify the lesson and the underlying emotions. Hopefully this resonates with you. If not, please allow yourself to rest early. 3 weeks before Tyson Creed decided to cut my salary in half, I received a phone call that he knew absolutely nothing about. I was leaving the office late that evening, the building almost empty. When my phone rang, Tracy Cooper, a calm female voice asked, "Yes, this is Lillian Ward." The name alone made me stop walking. Lillian Ward runs Ward and Dalton Marketing, the fastest growing marketing firm in the city. Her company had been quietly expanding for years, while firms like ours were fighting just to keep clients. "I've been watching your work for a long time," she said. "Not Tyson Creed's work. Yours." That sentence stayed with me, because everyone in this industry knows something that never appears on company websites or press releases. They know who actually delivers results. "Would you be open to coffee tomorrow morning?" Lillian asked. The next day, we met at a quiet cafe, 2 blocks from my office. She didn't waste time with small talk. "Tracy," she said, leaning forward slightly, "I'm expanding my firm, and I don't just want to hire you." I raised an eyebrow. "I want you as a partner." For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood. She continued calmly. "I've spoken to several CEOs you've worked with over the years. They all say the same thing when something goes wrong. You're the person who fixes it. When a campaign succeeds, Tyson Creed takes the credit." I didn't deny it. "Because it was true. I'm building something different," she said. "A company built on competence, relationships, and trust, not ego." I told her I needed time to think. But sitting in Tyson Creed's office now, staring at that ridiculous salary cut, her offer suddenly felt like perfect timing. To understand why Tyson Creed's decision would soon become a disaster, you need to understand something about how Creed and Alder Consulting actually worked. On paper, Tyson was the leader. He owned the company. His name was on the website. His photo appeared in the industry magazines. But inside the company, the reality was very different. For the past 9 years, I had quietly become the person who kept everything moving. Officially, my title was Senior Account Director. In reality, almost every important decision passed through me first. Every crisis, every client concern, Every campaign that needed to be rescued at the last possible moment. Tyson never noticed this shift happening because the system worked perfectly for him. Clients were happy, revenue kept growing. His reputation in the industry looked stronger every year, from the outside. It looked like he was running a successful firm, but what he never realized was that the real infrastructure of the company lived inside my phone contacts and my email inbox. Take our largest client, Hallbrook Manufacturing. Their CEO, Daniel Hallbrook, had Tyson's number saved in his phone. But when something urgent happened, he never called Tyson, he called me. Daniel trusted me because I understood the details of his business. I knew the deadlines that mattered to him. I remembered the pressure his company faced every quarter when production schedules tightened. Or consider Ardent Technologies, our second largest account. I'd worked with their founder, Melissa Grant, for nearly 5 years. I knew when her daughter started college. I knew the health problems her husband had gone through the previous year. Those details mattered. Not because they were personal gossip, but because relationships in business are built on trust and memory. Tyson showed up at annual dinners and shook hands. But when a campaign needed to be saved at midnight, or a mistake threatened to cost a client millions, they didn't call Tyson Creed, they called Tracy Cooper. And the same pattern repeated itself across nearly every major account we had. 21 major clients. Every single one of them had my number, which meant something Tyson Creed had never bothered to consider. If the person holding those relationships walked away, the company's entire foundation would walk out the door with her. What Tyson Creed never understood about the company he owned was something surprisingly simple. Businesses don't run on logos, office space, or executive titles. They run on people who trust each other, and over 9 years. I had quietly become the person connecting almost everyone who mattered to Creed and Alder Consulting. The clients trusted me, but so did the suppliers and vendors who helped our campaigns actually function. When we needed a rush printing order for a national product launch, I called Landon Price at Skyline Printworks. If we needed last-minute catering for a corporate event with 200 guests, Rosa Alvarez at Crescent Catering answered my call immediately. When a client presentation suddenly required a full video production overhaul overnight, Marcus Doyle from Frameforge Studios knew exactly what I meant when I said, "I need a miracle by tomorrow morning." These weren't just service providers. They were people who had worked with me long enough to know I respected their time, paid invoices promptly, and never blamed them for problems that weren't theirs. That kind of professional trust takes years to build. Tyson never noticed any of this. While he spent afternoons golfing with other executives or attending networking dinners where people exchanged business cards, they would forget the next morning. I was building something far more valuable, a network of people who actually trusted me to solve problems. The same thing was happening inside the office when junior staff didn't understand a project. They came to my desk. When 2 departments argued over deadlines, they asked if I could mediate. When employees thought about quitting, they came to talk to me first because they knew I would listen without judging them. None of this had been part of some strategy. It simply happened because I treated people like human beings instead of resources on a spreadsheet. Over time, something invisible had formed inside the company, an entire system of relationships that quietly held everything together. Tyson Creed thought he was the foundation of the company because his name was on the door. But the truth was much simpler. For years, I had been the person translating chaos into solutions, conflict into cooperation, and frustrated clients into loyal partners. And Tyson had made one catastrophic mistake. He believed that kind of value could be replaced with a new employee and a job description. He was about to learn how wrong that assumption was. After leaving Tyson Creed's office that afternoon, I walked straight back to my desk. The office looked exactly the same as it had that morning. Phones ringing, designers discussing campaign layouts, account managers rushing between meeting rooms. But for me, something fundamental had already changed. I opened my laptop and stared at the screen for a moment. Then I typed a short email. Lillian Ward, I've thought about your offer. If the partnership is still open, I accept. Tracy Cooper, I hit send. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Her reply was simple. Welcome aboard. Monday works for us. It was Thursday. I sat back in my chair and let out a slow breath. For 9 years, I had spent almost every waking hour making Tyson Creed's company succeed, fixing problems, saving client relationships, protecting a reputation that wasn't even mine. And now, with one message, that chapter was finished. That afternoon, I walked to the Human Resources office and submitted my resignation. 2 weeks' notice. Professional, polite. Exactly what my contract required. When Tyson was informed later that day, he barely reacted. He stepped out of his office and looked at me across the open workspace. "You're leaving?" he asked. "Yes." He shrugged. "Fine," he said. "We'll manage." The confidence in his voice was almost impressive. Tyson truly believed the company would continue exactly as it always had. What he didn't understand was something no resignation letter could ever explain. You can hand over documents. You can transfer files. You can even introduce someone new to your clients. But you cannot transfer trust. You cannot summarize years of conversations, late-night crisis calls, and promises kept in a 2-week handover meeting over the next 14 days. I became the most helpful departing employee in corporate history. I documented every project. I organized every file. I wrote detailed notes for the people who would take over my accounts. But the one thing I could not leave behind was the network of relationships that had quietly held Tyson Creed's entire company together. And the moment I walked out that door, that invisible structure would disappear with me. My last day at Creed and Alder Consulting ended quietly, at exactly 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon. I shut down my computer, packed the last few personal items from my desk, and walked through the office one final time. A few colleagues hugged me. Some wished me luck. Others looked uneasy, as if they sensed something was about to change but couldn't quite explain why. Tyson Creed never came out of his office to say goodbye. He didn't need to. In his mind, I was just another employee leaving a company that would continue operating exactly as it always had. Monday morning, I started my new role as partner at Ward and Dalton Marketing. My new office had tall windows overlooking the city. The atmosphere was calm, professional, and refreshingly free of ego. For the first time in years, I felt like my work actually mattered. Meanwhile, back at my old company, the first cracks began appearing almost immediately. The very first call came Monday afternoon. Daniel Halbrook, the CEO of Halbrook Manufacturing, called the office looking for me. The receptionist informed him I no longer worked there. Confused, Daniel asked to speak with someone handling his account. He was transferred to Tyson. The conversation apparently lasted less than 5 minutes. Tyson didn't understand the project Daniel was referring to. He couldn't answer the questions about the campaign timeline or the marketing adjustments we had planned for the following quarter. Daniel hung up frustrated. Tuesday morning, another call arrived. Melissa Grant from Ardent Technologies needed clarification on a product launch strategy we had been planning for months. Again, Tyson took the call personally. Again, the conversation ended quickly. By Wednesday, 2 more clients had called with similar questions, and each time the same problem became painfully obvious. Tyson Creed knew how to run meetings. He knew how to give speeches about strategy and growth. But when clients asked detailed questions about the actual work, there was no one left in the company who truly understood their business. And that realization was beginning to spread. By the second week after I left Creed and Alder Consulting, the problems were no longer limited to confused clients. The vendors began noticing something was wrong too. One afternoon, I received a phone call from Landon Price, the owner of Skyline Printworks. "Tracy," he said, his voice cautious, "I hope you don't mind me asking, but what's going on over there?" I knew exactly what he meant. "What happened?" I asked. "There's an invoice that's been sitting unpaid for almost 3 weeks. He explained. "Normally you handle these things immediately." I tried calling the office, and Tyson answered. Landon paused. He told me we should be more patient about payments. That alone told me everything. For years I had made sure every vendor was treated with respect. Payments were processed on time. Questions were answered quickly. Problems were handled before they escalated. Those details seem small to people like Tyson Creed, but to vendors whose businesses depend on reliable partnerships, they mean everything. If that's the new direction they're going, Landon continued carefully, we might need to rethink our relationship with them. I understood his frustration, but I also understood my boundaries. I'm not involved with their business anymore, I said calmly. You should probably discuss it directly with them. There was a short silence on the line. Then Landon asked the question I had been expecting. How's the new company working out for you? Very well, I said. I explained that Ward and Dalton Marketing was expanding quickly and looking for dependable partners for several upcoming campaigns. Landon didn't hesitate. If you need printing support, Tracy, we'd be happy to work with you. That conversation repeated itself several times over the next few weeks. Vendors weren't abandoning Tyson because I asked them to. They were leaving because the trust they had built with me no longer existed inside his company. And just like the clients, they began moving toward the place where those relationships still lived. One conversation at a time, one project at a time, and Tyson Creed still had no idea how quickly the ground beneath his company was disappearing. The real turning point came during my third week at Ward and Dalton Marketing. That was when the first major client officially walked away from Tyson Creed's company. The call came from Daniel Halbrook, CEO of Halbrook Manufacturing. He had somehow tracked down my new number through a mutual contact. Tracy, he said, sounding relieved just hearing my voice. I've been trying to figure out what's happening over there. I didn't ask which company he meant. I left Creed and Alder a few weeks ago. I explained calmly. Yes, they told me that. Daniel said, but nobody there seems to understand anything about our account. He went on to describe what had happened over the past 2 weeks. Emails unanswered, meetings rescheduled 3 times, deadlines missed. At one point, Tyson had apparently suggested starting fresh with a new marketing strategy because he couldn't understand the one we had already built. Daniel sounded exhausted. Tracy, we've worked together for years. You understand our production cycles, our seasonal demand, the pressures our board puts on marketing performance. Over there now, it's like talking to strangers. I listened quietly, because there was nothing I could say that would change the situation. Then Daniel asked the question I had been expecting. Would your new company be open to discussing our account? I paused for a moment, not because I needed time to think, but because I wanted to answer honestly. We'd be happy to have that conversation. I said. The meeting happened 3 days later, and by the end of that meeting, Halbrook Manufacturing officially moved their entire marketing account to Ward and Dalton Marketing. They weren't the only ones. Over the next few weeks, 2 more companies contacted us with similar frustrations, not because I recruited them, not because I sabotaged Tyson's company, but because something very simple had happened. The person who understood their business was gone, and without that connection, Tyson Creed's company had suddenly become just another agency that didn't know what it was doing. I didn't see Tyson Creed again until about 4 months after I left Creed and Alder Consulting. The encounter happened at a regional marketing industry networking event. These events are always the same crowded rooms, polite conversations, and professionals pretending to be more relaxed than they actually are. By that point, Ward and Dalton Marketing had grown quickly. Lillian and I had signed several major accounts, expanded our team, and were beginning to build a reputation as one of the most reliable agencies in the city. I was speaking with a potential client near the bar when I noticed someone staring at me from across the room. Tyson. He looked different, more tense, more tired. The confident swagger he used to carry had disappeared. After a moment, he started walking toward me. Tracy, he said when he reached me. We need to talk. His tone wasn't friendly. It was strained. I excused myself from the conversation I was having and turned toward him. I'm not sure there's anything we need to discuss, I said calmly. His jaw tightened. You destroyed my company, he said, loud enough for several nearby people to hear. For a moment, the conversations around us slowed. People were listening. I met his eyes and spoke quietly. I didn't destroy anything. He looked stunned. You took my clients, he said. I shook my head. No, I replied. Your clients left because the person who understood their business wasn't there anymore. His expression hardened. You planned this. I almost smiled. For 9 years, I said calmly. I fixed problems you didn't even know existed. Then I paused for a moment. And the day you cut my salary in half, I simply stopped fixing them. The silence between us stretched for several seconds. Because in that moment, Tyson Creed finally understood something he had never realized before. He hadn't lost his company because someone betrayed him. He lost it because he never actually knew how it worked in the first place. About 6 months after that industry event, I heard the final update about Tyson Creed's company. What remained of Creed and Alder Consulting had been sold, not to a competitor, not to a firm trying to continue the brand, but to a large investment group that specialized in acquiring struggling businesses, stripping them down for parts, and folding whatever was useful into other companies. The Creed and Alder name disappeared completely. For Tyson, it meant the end of the company his father had built decades earlier. For me, life had moved in a very different direction, at Ward and Dalton Marketing. Lillian and I continued growing faster than either of us had expected. Within 2 years, we expanded into 3 states, hired dozens of employees, and developed a waiting list of companies hoping to work with us. Industry publications began writing about our approach to client relationships and operational leadership. One article described our success in a single sentence that made me pause. Ward and Dalton's advantage comes from understanding something many firms forget: relationships are the real infrastructure of business. That sentence explained everything Tyson Creed had never understood. Titles are temporary. Office doors with your name on them are temporary. Even companies themselves can disappear. But the trust you build with clients, colleagues, and partners is the one asset that actually sustains a business. I learned something powerful the day I stopped trying to prove my value to someone who had already decided I didn't have any. Real worth isn't defined by a title, a salary number, or a boss's approval. It's defined by the trust you build, the problems you solve, and the people whose lives become easier because you showed up and did the work with integrity. Sometimes the bravest decision isn't fighting harder inside a place that refuses to see you. It's choosing to walk away and build something better. If you were in that situation, what would you do? Would you stay and accept less than you deserve? Or would you take the risk of believing in your own value? I'd love to know where you're listening from right now. And if this story meant something to you, consider subscribing, liking, or sharing it. One small action from you might help this message reach someone who needs the courage to change their own story. This story was fully created and produced by our team. We do not copy or borrow content from any other channel. Thank you for staying with us and listening until the end.